I'm Ali, I'm from Erskine Arts and I'm here in Glasgow with Ross Clark from Fiskur. We're getting some chat for the Scottish Mental Health Arts Festival, which is taking place this week. We're going to be talking to each guest about what normality is going to mean for them in the future. So I'd just like to introduce Ross Clark from Fiskur. How you doing?
Not bad, man. How are you?
It's really good to have you on, and thanks for being part of this.
You're very welcome.
For the people that are watching at home, give us a wee bit of background about yourself and what you're currently doing now. And we've got a new album out and you've got things in the pipeline.
My name's Ross. I'm from Clydebank. I've been a musician for the last maybe 18 years, which is a very long time. Been playing in bands in Glasgow for that amount of time, and just started a project with Andy Monaghan from Frightened Rabbit called Fiskur.
Yep.
Put an album called Cold Hands Burn Slow.
Amazing.
Thanks very much.
Love it.
So this it's not been a stereotypical year to release music. Last year we put the album out in August and couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Well, I say we couldn't do anything, but we had to be more creative in what we could do to promote the album. It's certainly been different. Yeah,
and I suppose that we don't have the same options when we're releasing music in creative industries now. We don't have that physical output anymore. Yes, we can release music or hard copy vinyl or CD, but we can't get out and gig and be in the environment with other people.
Yeah, and I think it affects artists and musicians more than consumers of music and art, I guess. That might be a controversial thing to say, but I guess one thing that satisfies me as an artist and musician is that when you play live, you can go and immediately are connected with that kind of physical reaction to your music.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that, in the light of however you're releasing your music, can certainly know that the music industry is not the most. It's quite can be quite a hostile place, quite a competitive environment. I think one thing that kind of just sort of justifies why you go through all that process is playing live. So it's been certainly. I'm probably going to say this quite a lot in this interview, but I'll say it has been different. But I guess it just it forces you to realign why you're doing it, and I guess there has been some reconnection to like the art and what you're putting forward.
Yeah.
Rather than the kind of combination of things which was before, and what we'll go back to, I guess.
Yeah, and I think, like you're saying, consumers of music, people that maybe traditionally work in 9 to 5 and are maybe not involved in creative industries, a big part of being a musician is that connection with other musicians and being in a studio together or a rehearsal room. And I know for myself, sometimes when if I'm rehearsing or I'm playing music, my mind is not thinking about anything else, and so it's a cathartic kind of process. You know, when you're at home, you've maybe got a million and one things going through your mind, but when you're in that space and you're making music, it's amazing for mental health and well-being, I think. And we've not been able to do that for the past year. And how have you coped in that sense with maybe not being able to have as much contact with people in the studio, or maybe having to do things remotely, and then not having live shows to rehearse for and then go out and be with people?
I think that the main challenge for me, out with Fiskur, I do a lot of music work, and I rely on music work for my living. So I guess my main focus hasn't really been on necessarily rehearsing, because sometimes I do think rehearsing kind of just has a negative effect on my mental health.
Okay.
Trying to chase people up and do that.
Yeah, I can appreciate
that's why
that.
That's why I got rid of the whole band. So I mean, I guess the folk. I think the pandemic just had such a massive effect on the different ways that we perform and do music, whether it's for work or whether it's for rehearsing. I do think I miss the kind of camaraderie of meeting up and rehearsing, and I guess it's getting stuff done, you know. Even if you've not got a gig, even if you're working towards a gig, you rehearse, you kind of justify yourself as an artist by meeting up and performing. I think I adapted to that in a sense by being okay. I'm just going to record in my house. I'm just going to make demos, but then and I wrote another record. But then I even burnt myself out on that, and we're just sitting here like waiting for something to happen. But I guess you can only do what you can to cope. I think the main thing, the live aspect of music not being available to us is probably the biggest challenge. Because it's an incentive to write music. I think sometimes when you start playing in bands and stuff like that, like I remember the reason I wanted to write songs was so I could play in King Tut's when I was like 17. So like it's been difficult with Fiskur. Just trying to maintain momentum, I guess.
Yeah.
Not that there's any need, but I think you have to.
No, I think you're right, because I find that as well, that certainly with work and with music, because you're doing, I mean, this might suit you more, saying that you've kind of got rid of a band, but not having that connection and people to bounce ideas off of, and when you are doing things by yourself, there's this, for me certainly anyway, there's a sense of sort of loneliness, doing it, and that feeling like you're doing things by yourself all the time can lead to quite a high level of burnout, and
exactly,
and low points, that you maybe wouldn't be expecting. Is that something that you've experienced?
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess like I wrote about like last summer, and I wrote about 35 tunes, and then I stopped. I couldn't write anymore, and I had like a pure like 6th or 7th month like writer's block, which is very strange. It's never ever happened to me. And I kind of didn't think about it. I didn't like let it bother me up until a point. But I know what you mean about burning out. Like, I think in the normal pre-COVID, I guess as artists, I guess people were just like go, constantly going. That's what life's about. It's about moving and not being able to do that. You kind of, the same attitudes that you apply to life don't really fit with like life in a pandemic, because albeit you have the time to like focus on things, focus on making music, or making art, there's just this thing hanging over. And I don't necessarily, it's not necessarily like a thing where it's you're kind of waiting to go back out and play live. It's not necessarily as like simple as that. It's like it's about, just generally like the world has changed, and that kind of affects.
It's heavy, man.
It's
really
heavy,
It's heavy.
I think it's important to kind of acknowledge the heaviness of it, like rather than think everyone's all right, because everyone's not all right.
That's something I've experienced recently as well. Is I think in the past I've let sort of greater worldly or political issues kind of get me down, and I've had to learn. My wife's helped me with this as well, but we've had to learn to shut that off to protect your mental health. Because you get to the point where you think there's nothing I can do about that. So why am I investing so much of my time and energy into it? But I think you're right. It's like you've got to be able to switch that off, but you've also got to acknowledge that it's there. Do you feel like the past year's given you some inspiration for new material, or has it made you go back to more of a nostalgic a process of writing, where thinking about better times in the past, and maybe wanting to go back to that type of life? Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I guess the pandemic completely sucked all that energy out. I think I had a breakup last year influenced like a stretch of writing, and then after I kind of sort of once I'd dealt with that through my writing, I kind of that was me. I was done. There was nothing left to be inspired by, which sounds kind of depressing, but like you're right. I did in order to kind of like tackle this writer's block, this COVID writer's block. I did go back into a nostalgic kind of style writing. Like I've got a studio set up in the house, and a lot of the way Fiskur songs have been created on a laptop and like messing about with synths and different kind of beats and on all sorts of different ways, and like approaching songs not from like the kind of stereotypical songwriting structure where it's just an instrument and a voice and a pad.
Which is great news for me because I love that type of sound, and when I first
heard the album,
the production's amazing, the sounds are great.
Well, I think like, and I was really, I kept on in the summer, like I kept on, because everyone talks about the first lockdown, when I was like, oh yeah, this will be over, and yeah, cool, I'll get loads of time to write music and all that, and I did, and I'm like, you know, I mean, did you all hear the product of that productive time? But I think with I've just been so uninspired, and I know what you mean, like political things and problems with the world. Like you've got one thing I do have time for is just focusing on that stuff, and I guess we're all kind of waking up to like a lot of the problems in the world, because I don't know whether because we've all been stuck inside and we're aware of, we have more time to look at the internet or whatever, but I did, I know what you mean about burning out and that kind of thing. Because I hadn't written in so long, I kind of forced myself, it's like, you know, if you don't eat, it's like, I guess it's a kind of childish attitude, if you don't eat your dinner, you don't get all your treats or something like that. But like, yeah, so I mean, I just took down my studio setup, and like I just had the acoustic guitar in the living room and a pad and a pen, and I was like, right, okay, I just need to
back to basics,
and like eventually things started working again. But that said, I mean, I used to do lots of songwriting workshops, like community arts settings, and because I haven't been doing that work for like almost a year and a half now, like those engines in my brain were not working, so it was hard to come back from that. Not necessarily that is like how I normally write, but just because of so much inactivity, and then like feeling like a writer's block on top of that, just at points it just seemed like, is that it? Can I just not write songs anymore? And it's like it was quite a scary and strange experience. But I can write songs, so like I just had to like go back to basics. But which I think is important for most people to do with anything.
Yeah.
Kind of those kind of foundations that you learn when you're learning anything are important for a reason, you know, and you can always go back to them. So.
Yeah, and
acoustic guitar being sad and
melancholy,
those still work.
That's right. I suppose they say if you don't use it, you lose it, you know, and I think you're right. Not being active, you know, people need time to relax and to chill out, but when you're not constantly, your mind's not constantly engaged, and like you say, you're maybe not doing your workshops, and you're maybe not working with other people or younger people. Certainly something we've experienced over the past year is the future is not online. You know, we thought this will be okay. We'll be able to get young people in classes online, but it's absolutely no substitute for being in a room with a guitar or a drum kit or a keyboard and making stuff happen. You know, and being inspired and being inspired by other people as well. And I think that's definitely something we've missed. And
I think just that's one great thing about music, is like there is this kind of energy, like I guess, like, you know, as you say, like being in a room with people, like
an energy.
I've been in sessions and workshops where you you have people who are not very confident or very hyperactive, and like you can't focus. But like, and you're in the room, and you kind of your energies are in the same space. That's the most happiest thing I've ever said in my life. When your spirits are able to connect,
yes.
Of course. Like there's changes that can happen in a room that are unavailable to us, like trying to do stuff online.
You don't plan for.
No.
Yeah.
Exactly. And like magical moments that are just gone.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, they will come back. But yeah, I think it's coming out of this. Like, I remember talking to someone, and I'm just like, it's so crazy. Like, as a people, like you have, like I guess what, a year and a half, maybe 2 years, where people don't actually physically embrace each other.
Yeah.
And I
yeah,
think,
even today coming in, it's like I would usually go for a hug or very least a handshake, and
you just have to be like,
like,
come on in,
hey man.
I feel like this, and also not being in physical spaces, I think that is going to have such an effect on and a fallout from people's mental health. And I think one thing coming at this is we're going to have to really focus on looking out for each other more than we've ever done before. And I guess like doing the work that we do, like with the young people, or like getting in rooms and like encouraging that from people. Because I mean, thinking about mental health, like if like anxiety and issues like that have most likely across the board been compounded by the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it's going to take a lot of work for everyone in communities and like in spaces that we work in to try and combat that and try and bring people into this, because one thing I think is very essential is that we can, I think there was one thing thinking about like to mention the Black Lives Matter movement, but like this idea of not going back to the way it was before.
Yeah.
I think that has to be a focus for everybody. Like, the issues that like with like people feeling alienated and people feeling like shut out through mental illness, like we have to, like the way things were before in the pandemic, we have to change our approach and be much more inclusive and more friendly, and like have that in the back of our heads that like when everything opens up, albeit it's going to be fantastic and everyone's excited about it, and shout out to the pubs, but there are going to be a lot of people who are still not going to be able to communicate. And I think certainly as an artist, and certainly it's just during the community, have to come around and support people who need the most support.
Yeah, I really like that idea of we need to help each other more than ever before, and I think talking about the way the world's changed and thinking about our nostalgia for our past, things have got so complicated, maybe things have got easier for people technically, but I think we're living in the most complex of times now, and I like that idea that should be our main focus, is actually just helping people, and for that to be the first thing in our mind when we're doing our day-to-day stuff, that it's not about making money, it's not about hitting targets, it's not about writing songs, it's not about putting the next album out or whatever. It's literally,
are you alright?
Is everything cool? Yeah.
I mean, because I think I think sometimes showing up to stuff, if you like, I'm a very active person, I do lots of different stuff, and I have a certain amount of confidence. I think I think recently everything I don't take that for granted. Like I think just because I can show up to somewhere someone else can doesn't mean we're both in the same level, comfort wise. So I think and that's the thing on the pandemic. Nothing like this has happened.
No.
In such a long time. I mean, if not ever. And I think, like using something as terrible and as horrible and depressing as this as an opportunity, as like a stopgap, and we can start again, start afresh, to really make sure that we look out for people, because it doesn't take a lot. And I think it's a kind of communicative outlook that we need to have, because there's so many terrible reminders about the state of mental health and Scotland and in the world. Like,
Yeah.
it's, I think we need to look at it as like, how many more reminders do we need about mental health before we start just going, are you okay? You know, it's like the simplest. We're not talking about huge changes. Like the people, the individuals are not able to make the big changes that I think we would need to tackle mental health on a wide scale. But what you can do is, like, you know, if you see someone, you know, in your work or in your friend group, you know, are you all right?
Yeah,
It's not,
definitely.
and like, because you know yourself, is, I mean, we all live with mental health, but like sometimes being asked is the most like.
It can seem insignificant, but
It's the
make a huge
thing.
difference to
Being heard and being seen is something that I think has come up in a lot of in the media in last year. People needing to be heard and be seen, and that to me just seems such a depressing idea that one thing, as far as society is going on, is one thing that we're looking for is to be heard and seen. It's like, it tells us a lot about what's important. I think we have to kind of remember that.
And at the moment, that's all online. People respond to how much love or attention they're getting by how many people are commenting on their page or whatever. And I know that can be a struggle for musicians and creative people, because a lot of their outlets at the moment are online, and when you put your track or your post or your social media update on there, and it gets really low engagement, and you know, whereas going back to basics where you pick somebody up, you know, you're in a room with somebody and you can ask them how you're getting on, you know, and maybe they'll chat to you about something you've never spoken about before, and you just don't know what that's going to do, which I think is incredible. And on that note, what do you think personally for you is going to become new normals? Like the world's changed for the good, and like you say, I hope that it's a bit of a reset for everybody, and we can go back to basics and really help people. But for you, how do you feel like your life's changed, and what do you think is going to be the new normal, the new normality moving forward? Are you still going to wear a mask in the shops? You know, are you maybe going to avoid going to busy places, things like that? What do you think is going to change for you?
I mean, things that have changed for me are the same things that have changed for everybody. I think I certainly will operate in as safe a manner as possible. But I think there's a normalcy that I wish for.
That was before COVID.
Oh yeah. There's a normalcy that I wish for, and there's a normalcy that I know that is. I guess I've become more aware of the kind of I've become more aware of things that are standing in the way of the normalcy. You know, I think one thing the pandemic has showed me is that the way that this pandemic has affected people less fortunate than myself, people of colour, people who are in low-paid jobs, like it's hit those groups so much harder than me. That a normal that I would like to see is for the pain and suffering of the pandemic to be rectified in those groups. Mm-hmm. I guess there could go down a wormhole here.
Don't know how much time I've got left.
Yeah, it started something.
5 hour long special edition.
Yeah. I guess to approach that from a lighter tone. I guess I want to see businesses open up back up. I want to see pubs and spaces that have not been used since the pandemic started to be used by people. And I guess one thing about the pubs reopening last week, which was great, is there's like an atmosphere back in the streets, which is good, and that's something I want to come back to. I think the word normal is problematic for me, as I may have demonstrated. I
And that will be another edition.
That's a different meeting.
But I think you're right. Like seeing, like I think even in Glasgow, like we maybe don't have the same kind of a European kind of lifestyle where everything's outdoors and you've got more beer gardens and more open street. And it's been nice to see the shops come out onto the street as well. I know that's been forced on them, but it's kind of, to me, it's felt like when you walk down the street, there's more of a community there. Does that make sense? That you see the people, you see the staff, and you see people interacting. And
I guess it's that nice thing about that kind of European.
We just need the weather to.
We're all shut inside all the time. But yeah, I mean, I guess I want to see the streets open up again, and I want to see people in them and enjoying them. And I guess hearing laughter, seeing mad wild stuff in town, like 10 o'clock at night, I want to see that. Yeah, I don't know what normal is anymore.
And on that note, thank you very much
you're very welcome.
Joining us on this episode. Thanks very much for tuning in. You've been watching an interview with Ross Clark from Fiskur as part of the Scottish Mental Health Arts Festival 2021. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.